What can you tell us about the shooter's family, the alleged shooter's family?
Well, you know, they've really kept to themselves. Obviously, the press has been camped outside of their home, you know, for days, trying to get some types of comments from them. They have not really done any interviews with the press. We did talk to some neighbors in that community that say that, you know, the family sort of kept to themselves. There was some stuff out earlier in the week, in the days following this shooting, that, you know, that there were arguments between the neighbors and Jared's parents about trash being left out on the curb, you know, things of that nature. But, you know, they have really holed themselves up in that home, as you can imagine. You know, hard to say what that family is going through. We've heard a lot about, you know, what happened the night and the morning of that shooting, that Jared Loughner came home and got into an argument with his father, and his father, you know, Jared ran out of the house and his father sort of chased after him. So, you know, it's been a really interesting sort of sidebar to this whole story. Of course, we've been trying to focus mostly on the victims, all of the funerals and the progress that the survivors continue to make, but certainly we've been following that story as well in terms of that gunman, and trying to get inside that young man's head to find out, you know, what would have prompted such a horrible tragedy like this.
Case, we also have some guests on set who have some questions for you. Eric Yaverbaum?
Yeah, I'm just curious in situations like that. I mean, the notion of privacy. I mean, I know a public figure was involved, but his parents. I mean, is that necessary down there?
Is it necessary to try and talk to the parents? I'm just having a little.
It sounds like it might be a circus at their house too.
It is. It's really died off. I mean, we were there in the days following this shooting, and like I said, we really have been trying to focus mostly, if you've watched the coverage, you know, we've been trying to focus mostly on the victims and the survivors of this shooting. But, you know, the press is always trying to sort of, you know, give a backgrounder, because a lot of people, I think, at home are wondering, you know, well what's up with these parents? Right. You know, how could they have not known if their son was troubled? You know, we've heard a lot about his run-ins with law enforcement, and you know, professors at his community college being kicked out of college, trying to join the Army, but he was rejected by the military. And you know, I think a lot of people at home have been wondering, why did the parents not perhaps notice that their son was troubled like this? Why didn't they try and get him help? So an invasion of privacy, I don't know. I mean, their son is accused of a pretty heinous crime, and I think that a lot of folks want to know what was going on inside that household, and we as members of the press are trying to, you know, get to the bottom of that if we can. But as I said, the family really hasn't spoken to members of the media since this whole thing.
All right, Casey Stiegel, great seeing you. Thank you for that report. We appreciate it. Yeah, it really does raise a lot of questions. I was very shocked when I heard early this morning that Gifford's husband was actually thinking, you know, yeah, I'd be okay talking to these parents. I mean, you don't want to blame the parents, but my God, you know, what is going on behind closed doors there?
Let's put that in, excuse me for interrupting.
Go ahead.
Let's put that in context. Diane Sawyer raised the question herself. I mean, it wasn't anything that this man volunteered. I mean, it's the, you know, what I call the Mehmet Ali Agca syndrome. The Pope goes to see the man who tried to kill him back in the 80s. And this kind of drama is a favorite technique of so many reaching for the cheap seats reporters.
Yeah, but you know, but if she hadn't asked that question, people would be saying, well, you're not doing
what is he going to say? No one, you know.
Yeah, heck yeah.
You know, it's much more
palatable.
I would say
no. You know what?
In our society, it's much more palatable to be the tender man and say, oh, well, of course I would. And maybe that, too. I mean,
but you know what? You don't, like, if you think about it, though, in the way that the news cycle works now, the second a journalist asks a question, it can spin all around the world in about a minute. In the good old days, when I started in the PR business, I could have a story move in Sweden. They could tell me on a Friday I'd have till Monday to prepare. Yeah. Now I have until the next minute to prepare. So when asked the question, because it was just a response to a question. It wasn't like a proactive, I want to do this. He was responding to I don't know whether that was genuine or not. I also know that when people get on camera, they behave differently. Well, I don't know if it's real or not.
And that backs up Liz's point. But
I would also like to say how the hardcore reporting in this story has been virtually abandoned. We're drowning in grief, and there's nothing that America does better these days than grief. What happens is, it's the Princess Diana syndrome, too. It's a media event. The cameras are there. Everybody gravitates there with flowers and all the rest of it. Many feel that the time would be better spent in churches and synagogues praying for the soul of these poor people. I'm not finished.
Go ahead.
And
whoa, sister.
Well, now wait a minute. But the other part is, where's the hard reporting done on the so-called guidance counselors who are supposed to send up the red flags when they detect problems in students? You know, they've gotten away with their kind of ilk for years now, pretending to be counselors. And what about the parents? I mean, you know, there are records down in City Hall or somewhere in that town. What about looking up hardcore things? What about some research? This story has become mush.
Eric?
Because so many of them do now. It's between 24-hour news, which changed the way news was reported because it was round the clock, and the internet, which put it on steroids. This is how stories happen now. But
the networks also put it on steroids.
Well, they don't have a choice. They have to compete. And it's not like, I mean, think about it.
But they had huge audiences, you know. They could have tamped it down. I mean, I have to say, dispatch your anchor there in a minute and also
I know, but it's as a kid, I grew up, Walter Cronkite ended the news. That was the news, at 6 o'clock. We knew what it was. And
most of the time he was right.
What's that? Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Alrighty, on that note, we are going to take a quick break, and we will return momentarily. Be right back.